Little girl can barely walk. Teacher. Looks at her pants and calls 911 in panic. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Miss Taylor noticed her on the first day of school, the little girl with perfect posture who never quite smiled. With her eyes, Vivian Thompson sat primly at her desk in the front row, hands folded neatly, ankles crossed. Her uniform was immaculate, not a wrinkle in sight, and her dark hair was pulled back in a tight, precise bun that seemed too adult for a 6-year-old. When called upon, she would answer in full sentences with vocabulary that surprised even the most seasoned first-grade teacher. "The metamorphosis of caterpillars is quite fascinating, Miss Taylor," she had said during their first science lesson, pronouncing each syllable with careful precision, while the other children giggled at the big words. But it wasn't Vivian's advanced vocabulary or perfect penmanship that kept drawing Miss Taylor's attention throughout those first weeks of September. It was something else, something in the careful way the child moved, as if she were made of glass. During recess, while other children ran wild across the playground, Vivian would stand by the wall watching, not with longing or sadness, but with a strange detachment, as if running were a foreign concept. "Would you like to join the jump rope game?" Miss Taylor had suggested once, gesturing to a group of girls. Vivian had looked up, with those serious brown eyes. "No, thank you. I prefer to observe." When the classroom grew noisy, Miss Taylor noticed how Vivian never slumped in her chair like the other children. Even after hours of lessons, her back remained poker straight, though sometimes a flicker of discomfort would cross her face before quickly disappearing behind that practiced, pleasant expression. It was during the 3rd week that Miss Taylor began taking notes. Small things, really. How Vivian would ask to use the restroom at odd times, always returning looking slightly more comfortable. How she would shift her weight when seated but never fully relax. How she would bring untouched lunches back home in her expensive bento box, claiming she wasn't particularly hungry today. On this particular Wednesday, Miss Taylor watched as Vivian carefully maneuvered around desks during cleanup time, moving with that same deliberate grace that seemed so unnatural in a child her age. When a classmate accidentally bumped into her, Vivian's face went white for a split second before that pleasant mask slipped back into place. "Are you all right, Vivian?" Miss Taylor asked, approaching quietly. "Yes, Miss Taylor. I'm perfectly fine," the girl replied automatically. But she wasn't fine. As the children filed out for recess, Miss Taylor saw Vivian pause by her cubby, one small hand reaching behind to adjust something beneath her uniform skirt, her face briefly contorting before smoothing out again. Miss Taylor followed her outside, watching as the child walked slowly along the edge of the playground, maintaining that unnaturally perfect posture despite obvious discomfort. Something was wrong, had been wrong, and suddenly she couldn't ignore it any longer. She approached Vivian by the fence, kneeling down to meet her eyes. "Honey, you seem uncomfortable today. Is there something bothering you, something I can help with?" For a moment, Vivian's mask slipped completely, her eyes filled with a confusion that broke Miss Taylor's heart, as if the very concept of an adult offering help was utterly foreign. The little girl glanced around, then leaned slightly closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper, and the words she spoke sent an icy chill down Miss Taylor's spine. "Does every dad do this?" Miss Taylor felt her heart stop, then race. "Do what, sweetie?" But just as quickly as it had appeared, Vivian's vulnerability vanished. She straightened up, that perfect posture returning, and smiled her practiced smile. "Nothing, Miss Taylor. I'm fine. Perfectly fine." But Miss Taylor knew better. And in that moment, she silently promised this strange, formal little girl that she would discover what lay behind those carefully chosen words. Miss Taylor couldn't shake Vivian's whispered question from her mind. For the rest of the day, she observed the child with renewed attention, noticing how she winced slightly when sitting down after recess, how she kept her back rigid, even when the other children sprawled comfortably on the reading rug. That evening, Miss Taylor started a notebook. At the top of the first page, she wrote, Vivian Thompson, and underlined it twice. Below, she listed her observations. Never runs or jumps during recess. Appears uncomfortable when sitting. For long periods, perfect posture at all times. Unnatural for age. Asks to use restroom frequently. Advanced vocabulary and mannerisms. Whispered question. Does every dad do this? The next morning, Vivian arrived precisely 7 minutes before the bell, just as she did every day. Her father's sleek, black car pulled up to the curb, and Miss Taylor watched through the classroom window as the chauffeur opened the door. Mr. Thompson emerged first, tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his salt and pepper hair perfectly styled. He was handsome in that polished way that spoke of old money and careful grooming. When Vivian stepped out, her father placed a hand on her shoulder. Even from a distance, Miss Taylor could see how the child immediately straightened her posture in response to his touch. There was something practiced about the way she tilted her chin up and squared her tiny shoulders. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson," Miss Taylor called, stepping outside to greet them. "I've been meaning to speak with you about Vivian's progress. Has there been a problem?" His voice was pleasant, concerned, the voice of a caring father. "Not at all. She's exceptional," Miss Taylor replied, watching his face relax. "I just wondered if you might have a moment to discuss some enrichment activities. She's quite advanced." "I'm afraid I have meetings all day," he said, checking his watch. "Perhaps another time? My assistant can arrange something." "Of course," Miss Taylor smiled, then glanced down at Vivian. "I love your shoes today. They look comfortable." A flicker of something, confusion, crossed Vivian's face before she responded. "Thank you, Miss Taylor. They're new. Daddy says proper footwear is essential for correct posture development." Mr. Thompson beamed with pride. "We're very focused on proper development in our home, aren't we, Princess?" Vivian nodded obediently. "Yes, Daddy." "Well, I must be off," he said, checking his watch again. "Remember what we practiced this morning, Vivian." As he walked away, Miss Taylor noticed how Vivian's shoulders remained rigidly straight, as if she were balancing an invisible book on her head. The chauffeur nodded politely before returning to the car. "Shall we go inside?" Miss Taylor asked gently. During morning circle time, Miss Taylor introduced a new activity. "Today, we're going to talk about our bodies," she explained. "Everyone, stretch up tall like a tree." The children giggled as they reached toward the ceiling, all except Vivian, who merely stood a fraction straighter, her eyes darting nervously around the room. "Now, let's bend down and touch our toes like a wilting flower." While the other children flopped forward with enthusiastic abandon, Vivian bent slightly at the waist, her movements stiff and controlled. A small gasp escaped her lips, so quiet that Miss Taylor almost missed it. "Vivian, are you all right?" she asked softly. "I'm fine," the child whispered, though her eyes had gone glassy with unshed tears. I don't think I'm supposed to bend that way." "Everyone can bend their own special way," Miss Taylor reassured her. "Your body belongs to you." Vivian stared at her with a strange expression, something between confusion and disbelief. "No, it doesn't," she said softly, as if sharing a simple fact. "It belongs to the future." Throughout the day, Miss Taylor added more notes to her growing list. After school, she approached the school nurse, Mrs. Bennett, a kind woman with 30 years of experience. "I need your professional opinion," Miss Taylor said, closing the door behind her. "It's about Vivian Thompson." Mrs. Bennett's expression turned thoughtful. "The perfect little doll from room 7? What about her?" "That's just it," Miss Taylor replied. "She's too perfect, and I think she might be in pain." The Thompson estate, sprawled across 3 manicured acres in the city's most exclusive neighborhood. Behind its wrought iron gates and pristine hedges, morning began precisely at 6 a.m. when Vivian's alarm chimed with a gentle classical melody. The little girl's eyes opened immediately. There was no stretching, no lingering under warm covers as most children might do. Instead, she slipped from bed with practiced efficiency. her movements careful and measured as she straightened her pink pajamas and smoothed her bedsheets until not a wrinkle remained. In the adjoining bathroom, she carefully brushed her teeth, exactly 2 minutes as taught, washed her face and combed her hair into the neat style her father preferred. Next came the most important part of her morning routine. "Good morning, princess," her father called, knocking twice before entering her room. He carried a sleek silver case. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes, Daddy," Vivian answered, standing automatically in the center of her bedroom, a beautiful space filled with expensive toys that looked barely touched. "Excellent. Let's prepare for your day, shall we?" Mr. Thompson opened the case, revealing what looked like a modified back brace. "Arms up, please." Vivian lifted her arms without hesitation, though something flickered behind her eyes, a thought she kept hidden. "If I show that it hurts, I'm not trying hard enough." "This new model should be more comfortable," her father explained as he fastened the device around her. "Small torso. Dr. Winter says it's the most advanced postural trainer available. You're very lucky to have access to such cutting-edge development tools." "Yes, Daddy, thank you," Vivian replied automatically, adjusting to the familiar pressure as the brace tightened around her. "Now, let's practice your walking. Remember what Dr. Winters said about alignment." For the next 15 minutes, Vivian walked back and forth across her bedroom while her father observed with critical attention, occasionally adjusting her shoulders or the tilt of her chin. "Much better than yesterday," he finally announced, checking his watch. "You're making progress. Soon this will all feel completely natural." "But it never feels natural," Vivian thought silently. "Not like when I'm alone and no one's watching." "I have to leave for Singapore tonight," Mr. Thompson continued, "but Ms. Pierce will oversee your evening routine, and I've left detailed instructions. Dr. Winters will visit on Thursday for your assessment." "How long will you be gone, Daddy?" Vivian asked, her voice carefully neutral despite the hope fluttering in her chest. "Just 3 days. Not long enough for bad habits to form," he said with a knowing smile. "I expect perfect posture reports when I return." After her father left for work, Vivian was dressed by Ms. Pierce, the housekeeper, who helped her into her school uniform, careful to arrange it so the postural device remained hidden underneath. "Does it pinch today, little one?" Ms. Pierce asked quietly, her eyes sympathetic as she buttoned Vivian's blouse. "I'm fine," Vivian answered automatically. "Daddy says discomfort is just weakness leaving the body." Ms. Pierce's mouth tightened, but she said nothing more as she finished dressing the child and led her downstairs for breakfast. In the vast kitchen, Chef Bernard had prepared Vivian's prescribed meal, a protein smoothie and precisely measured portions of fruit and whole grains. No sugar, no processed foods, nothing that might interfere with optimal development. "Your lunch is packed according to your father's specifications," he informed her, handing over the expensive bento box. "And remember, no trading with the other children." "Yes, Chef," Vivian nodded, though her eyes lingered on the freshly baked muffins cooling on a rack, clearly destined for the staff's breakfast. As the chauffeur drove her to school, Vivian gazed out the window at children walking with their parents. Some skipped, some dawdled, some even jumped in puddles from yesterday's rain. She pressed her hand against the window, wondering what that kind of freedom felt like. "Daddy says perfect girls don't jump in puddles. Perfect girls make everyone proud by standing tall." At school, Vivian's careful mask stayed firmly in place, until that moment on the playground when Miss Taylor had asked if she needed help. No adult had ever noticed her discomfort before, or at least none had ever mentioned it. For one dangerous moment, Vivian had almost told the truth. Almost. But perfect girls kept secrets too, especially the important ones. "She said what?" Mrs. Bennet set down her coffee mug, her attention fully focused on Miss Taylor. "She asked me if every dad does this," Miss Taylor repeated, her voice low despite the empty nurse's office. "And when I tried to ask what she meant, she just shut down, went right back to her perfect child routine." Mrs. Bennet frowned, her 30 years of experience evident in the thoughtful way she considered this information. That could mean many things, Sarah. Children often misinterpret adult behaviors. It's not just the question, Miss Taylor insisted, opening her notebook. It's everything else I've observed, the way she moves so carefully, like she's in pain but hiding it, the way she never relaxes her posture. And there's something about her father that bothers me. He's charming, certainly, but there's this intensity when he talks about her development. The school nurse nodded slowly. The Thompson name is well known in this city. Harrison Thompson sits on several hospital boards and has donated millions to children's charities. His wife passed away when Vivian was just a baby. I didn't know that, Miss Taylor said softly. It was quite tragic. Cancer, I believe. Some say that's why he's so protective of Vivian. She's all he has left. Mrs. Bennet tapped her pen against her desk thoughtfully. Still, I trust your instincts, Sarah. You've always had a good sense about these things. What should we do? Let me schedule a routine health check for her class. Nothing that would raise suspicion. We're due for vision and hearing screenings anyway. 2 days later, Vivian sat perfectly still as Mrs. Bennet checked her vision with a standard eye chart. Very good, Vivian. Now I need to check your hearing and posture. Could you remove your cardigan, please? The little girl hesitated, her composure slipping for just a moment. Is that necessary? It's standard procedure, dear. I need to see your shoulders properly. Slowly, Vivian unbuttoned her cardigan. As she removed it, Mrs. Bennet noticed how carefully she moved, as if trying to prevent her blouse from shifting. Now, I'm going to touch your shoulders to check your alignment. Is that all right? Vivian nodded, though her body tensed visibly. With gentle, experienced hands, Mrs. Bennet felt the child's shoulders and spine. Through the blouse, she detected something unusual, a firm edge of what felt like plastic or metal. Vivian, are you wearing something under your uniform? The child's expression remained carefully neutral. It's my posture trainer. Daddy says it helps me grow properly. I see. And do you wear this every day? Yes. Dr. Winters designed it specially for me. Mrs. Bennet kept her face professionally calm despite her concern. And does it hurt, Vivian? Daddy says discomfort is part of woe. Proper development, the child answered, skillfully avoiding the question. That's not what I asked, dear. I asked if it hurts you. For a moment, something flickered in Vivian's eyes, a silent debate. Then her practiced smile returned. I'm fine, Mrs. Bennet. May I put my cardigan back on now? I don't want to catch a chill. After Vivian left, Mrs. Bennet immediately called Miss Taylor to her office. She's wearing some kind of brace under her clothes, the nurse explained, her voice tight with concern. She called it a posture trainer prescribed by someone named Dr. Winters. Is that normal? Miss Taylor asked. For a child her age? Postural supports are sometimes used for specific medical conditions, but they're typically worn for limited periods under proper medical supervision. From what I could feel, this seems unusually rigid for a child. Mrs. Bennet's expression was grave. And there's something else. I noticed marks on her shoulders where the device appears to be pressing too tightly. Miss Taylor felt her stomach knot. So what do we do? We need to contact the school counselor and possibly family services, but we must tread carefully. Harrison Thompson is a powerful man with connections throughout the city. I don't care who he is, Miss Taylor said firmly. If his daughter is being harmed, someone needs to step in. I agree, but we need more information before making formal accusations. Could you keep detailed observations for the rest of the week? Document everything. Physical symptoms, things she says, any interaction with her father. As Miss Taylor headed back to her classroom, she found Vivian sitting alone at her desk while the other children played a game during free time. Would you like to join them? Miss Taylor asked gently. Vivian looked up, her expression serious. I don't know how to play that game. I could teach you. The little girl glanced at the laughing children, and for a moment her mask slipped. Longing flickered across her face before she quickly composed herself. No, thank you. Daddy says I should Focus on educational activities during school hours. Miss Taylor sat down at the tiny desk beside her. Vivienne, you know you can tell me anything, right? If something is bothering you or if you have questions about what's normal. The child's eyes widened slightly before she looked down at her. Perfectly folded hands. I'm fine, Miss Taylor, perfectly fine. But the slight tremble in her voice told a different story entirely. Ms. Winters from Family Services arrived on Monday morning, dressed in a navy suit that somehow managed to be both professional and approachable. With her warm smile and gentle demeanor, she didn't look like someone who regularly handled difficult cases, which was precisely why she excelled at her job. Thank you for meeting with me, she told Miss Taylor and Mrs. Bennett in the conference room. I've reviewed your initial report. Tell me more about your observations. Miss Taylor shared her notebook filled with detailed notes from the past week. How Vivienne never changed for gym class with the other children. How she'd wince when bending to pick up a dropped pencil. How she ate precisely 3 bites of lunch before carefully repacking the remainder. Yesterday during art time she wouldn't sit on the floor with the others, Miss Taylor added. When I asked why, she said, floor sitting isn't proper posture practice. Ms. Winters nodded thoughtfully. Children often repeat phrases they've heard from authority figures. Has she mentioned this Dr. Winters her father consults with? Only that this doctor designed her posture trainer, Mrs. Bennett replied. I've checked with colleagues at Children's Hospital. There's no pediatric specialist by that name in our region. I'd like to observe Vivienne in her classroom. Environment, Ms. Winters said, without drawing attention, of course. That afternoon, Ms. Winters sat quietly in the back of room 7, clipboard in hand, ostensibly evaluating teaching methods. In reality, her experienced eyes never left Vivienne. She watched how the child moved with careful precision, how she raised her hand with perfect posture to answer questions, how she kept her back straight, even when clearly uncomfortable. During a moment when the children were working independently, Ms. Winters approached Vivienne's desk. That's beautiful handwriting, she commented, keeping her tone casual. Vivienne looked up, her expression polite but guarded. Thank you. Daddy says proper penmanship reflects proper thinking. Your daddy sounds like he has high standards. The highest, Vivienne confirmed, a note of pride mixing with something else in her voice. He says I'm being prepared for an exceptional future. And what do you want for your future? The question seemed to confuse the child. She blinked several times before answering. To make Daddy proud, of course. After observing for an hour, Ms. Winters met again with Miss Taylor and Mrs. Bennett. I'd like to schedule a home visit, she said. See the environment she's living in. Meet this father. Will he agree to that? Miss Taylor asked. I'll approach it as a routine follow-up to gifted program recommendations. Nothing that would raise alarm. 2 days later, Ms. Winters drove through the impressive gates of the Thompson estate. The mansion stood like something from a magazine. Perfectly manicured gardens, gleaming windows, not a single thing out of place. Harrison Thompson greeted her in the grand foyer, every inch the successful businessman and devoted father. His handshake was firm, his smile charming as he welcomed her inside. Vivienne's teacher mentioned you're evaluating exceptional students, he said, leading her into a formal living room where not a cushion was out of place. I've always known my daughter is special. She's certainly advanced for her age, Ms. Winters agreed. Her vocabulary and poise are remarkable. Pride gleamed in his eyes. She takes after her mother, brilliant and poised. I've dedicated myself to ensuring Vivienne receives every advantage. Could you tell me about your approach to her education and development? For the next 20 minutes, Harrison spoke passionately about the customized learning program he'd created for his daughter. He discussed brain development, educational theories, and the importance of physical alignment for cognitive optimization. May I meet Vivienne? Ms. Winters asked when he finally paused. Of course. He pressed a button on a sleek intercom system. Ms. Pierce, please bring Vivienne to the living room. When Vivienne entered, she was the picture of childhood perfection. Hair neatly arranged, dress unwrinkled, posture impeccable. but Ms. Winters didn't miss how the child's eyes immediately sought her. Father's approval. "Hello, Ms. Winters." Vivian greeted her with rehearsed politeness. "Vivian has been practicing her piano this afternoon," Harrison explained. "Perhaps she could play for you." "I'd love that." As Vivian performed a piece clearly advanced for her age, Harrison watched with obvious pride. When she played a wrong note, however, Ms. Winters noticed his smile tighten almost imperceptibly. Vivian noticed too. Her shoulders immediately stiffened. "Stand straight, Vivian," he reminded her softly, touching her shoulder. "Remember what we practiced." The child adjusted. Instantly, though Ms. Winters caught the flash of discomfort across her face. When the tour continued to Vivian's bedroom, a space more suited to a museum display than a child's retreat, Ms. Winters maintained her professional demeanor despite her growing concerns. "Your home is lovely," she told Harrison as they concluded the visit. "Thank you for being so accommodating." "Anything for Vivian's education," he replied smoothly. "I assume this means she'll be considered for the advanced program?" "We're still in the evaluation phase," Ms. Winters answered carefully. "I'll be in touch soon." As she drove away from the Thompson estate, Ms. Winters immediately called her supervisor. "I need to schedule a full evaluation," she said firmly, and quickly. "Vivian, have you ever had a birthday party?" Miss Taylor asked casually during lunch, sitting beside the little girl who was methodically arranging her untouched food into perfect sections. Vivian looked up, confusion briefly crossing her face. "I have birthday observations, of course." "Observations?" Miss Taylor kept her tone light, though her heart squeezed at the strange phrasing. "Yes. Daddy brings a special protein cupcake with a candle, and we review my developmental progress from the previous year." Vivian's voice carried no sadness, only matter-of-fact acceptance. "Then he gives me something educational to mark the occasion." "That sounds very structured," Miss Taylor said carefully. "What about friends? Do you ever have play dates after school?" Vivian's fork paused midair. "Daddy says social development comes after physical and intellectual foundations are established. I'll have selected peer interactions when I'm ready." Miss Taylor made a mental note of this response, along with the practiced way it was delivered, as if reciting from memory. "What games do you like to play at home?" Again, that flicker of confusion. "I don't play games. I have development activities." "What about when you're alone in your room? What do you do for fun?" Vivian lowered her voice, glancing around as if sharing a secret. "Sometimes when no one's watching, I dance a little. Just small movements. Perfect girls aren't supposed to bounce around, but sometimes my body just wants to." The confession, so innocently delivered, made Miss Taylor's chest ache. "Everyone needs to move freely." "Sometimes, Vivian. That's completely normal." "It doesn't feel normal," the child whispered. "It feels wrong, like I'm breaking an important rule." Meanwhile, in the school principal's office, a very different conversation was taking place. Harrison Thompson sat across from Principal Morris, his posture as perfect as his daughter's, his expression concerned yet controlled. "I understand there have been some questions regarding Vivian's physical development," he said, placing a leather portfolio on the desk. "I've brought her complete medical history to clear up any confusion." Principal Morris opened the portfolio, finding neatly organized documents with official letterheads and medical terminology. "Vivienne has a congenital condition affecting her musculoskeletal development," Harrison explained. "These are her treatment records and specialist recommendations." "I see," Principal Morris said, scanning the impressive-looking documents. "Including this postural device she wears?" "Precisely. It's a custom orthopedic trainer developed specifically for her condition." Harrison's voice was smooth, reasonable. "Without proper support during these crucial developmental years, she could face serious physical limitations later in life. And this Dr. Winters who's overseeing her treatment. Dr. Alexander Winters. He's a specialist who consults privately for select patients. His methods are cutting edge, not mainstream yet, but highly effective." Harrison's smile was confident. I've spared no expense for my daughter's care. Principal Morris frowned slightly. Mr. Thompson, I hope you understand our concern comes from a place of care for Vivian. Our staff noticed she appears uncomfortable at times. Of course, and I appreciate their attention, Harrison replied smoothly. Medical interventions often involve some discomfort, like braces for teeth. The temporary inconvenience prevents lifelong problems. After Harrison left, Principal Morris called Miss Taylor and Mrs. Bennett to his office, along with Ms. Winters from Family Services. He had documentation for everything, he explained, showing them the portfolio. Medical records, specialist recommendations, even growth charts. May I? Ms. Winters asked, examining the papers carefully. These look official, but I'd like to verify them with the medical board. He seemed genuinely concerned about Vivian's welfare, Principal Morris added. Not at all like someone with something to hide. The most concerning situations often involve people who believe they're doing the right thing, Ms. Winters replied carefully, even when their methods are harmful. Back in the classroom, the children were working on an assignment about families. Miss Taylor walked between the desks, pausing behind Vivian, who was drawing with careful precision. That's beautiful, Vivian. Is that your house? The child nodded. Yes, and that's Daddy, and Ms. Pierce, and Chef Bernard. Where are you in the picture? Vivian pointed to a small, straight figure standing beside her father. Unlike the other figures who had rounded limbs and casual poses, this figure was drawn like a perfect stick, rigidly straight, arms at precise angles. Why did you draw yourself differently than the others? Miss Taylor asked gently. Vivian looked up, her expression serious. Because I have to stand special. Daddy says the future depends on it. As the children packed up at day's end, Vivian winced noticeably while reaching for her backpack. When she turned and saw Miss Taylor watching, she quickly straightened her face and posture. Are you hurting, Vivian? Miss Taylor asked quietly. Perfect means no pain showing, the child whispered, almost to herself. Then louder, I'm fine, Miss Taylor, perfectly fine. But the tight lines around her small mouth told a different story entirely. Today we're starting a special art project, Miss Taylor announced to her first grade class. We're going to draw my perfect day. What would happen in your most perfect day ever? The classroom buzzed with excitement as children called out their ideas. A trip to the zoo, eating ice cream for breakfast, playing video games all day. Miss Taylor smiled, walking between the desks as she distributed large sheets of drawing paper. Think about what would make you happiest. What would you do? Who would be there? How would you feel? At her desk, Vivian sat perfectly straight, listening to her classmates with a mixture of confusion and fascination. When Miss Taylor placed paper before her, the little girl stared at it blankly. Is something wrong, Vivian? Miss Taylor asked gently. I'm not sure what to draw, the child confessed. What makes a day perfect? The innocent question broke Miss Taylor's heart a little. A perfect day is different for everyone. It's when you feel happy and free to be yourself. Vivian considered this carefully. I'll try my best. While the other children immediately grabbed crayons and began drawing with enthusiastic scribbles, Vivian sat, motionless, deep in thought. Finally, she selected a pencil and began drawing with slow, deliberate strokes. Miss Taylor circulated around the room, admiring rocket ships and swimming pools, unicorns and soccer games. When she reached Vivian's desk, she had to suppress a gasp. Unlike the colorful, chaotic scenes her classmates had created, Vivian's drawing was meticulously precise. It showed a rigid, puppet-like figure of a child, arms and legs attached to thin strings that extended upward. Around the figure's torso were strange, cage-like lines. The child figure stood perfectly straight, while adult figures smiled approvingly in the background. Can you tell me about your drawing, Vivian? Miss Taylor asked, keeping her voice steady despite her concern. This is me when I'm doing everything right, Vivian explained matter-of-factly. when I'm in control and everyone is pleased with my performance. And these lines around you, what are they? That's my special equipment that helps me be perfect, the child replied. In my perfect day, I wouldn't feel it at all because I'd be used to it, and Daddy would say I'm making excellent progress. I notice you drew yourself like a puppet, Miss Taylor observed carefully. With strings. Vivian nodded. That's how it feels sometimes, like I have to move exactly right or I'm doing it wrong. And is that comfortable? The child considered this question as if it had never occurred to her before. Comfort isn't the goal. Miss Taylor, excellence is. During recess, Miss Taylor showed the drawing to Mrs. Bennet and Ms. Winters in the nurse's office. I've never seen anything like this from a 6-year-old, Miss Taylor said. Look at how she's drawn herself, rigid, controlled, attached to strings. Ms. Winters studied the drawing carefully. Children often express through art what they can't articulate in words. These lines around her torso clearly represent the posture trainer she's being forced to wear. And the puppet strings? Mrs. Bennet asked. Control, Ms. Winters said grimly. She sees herself as something to be manipulated and controlled, not as a child with autonomy. We need to act, Miss Taylor insisted. This can't continue. We're building a case, Ms. Winters assured her. I've been checking those medical documents Mr. Thompson provided. There are inconsistencies. The letterhead exists, but I can't confirm that this Dr. Winters has the credentials claimed. How much longer will this take? Miss Taylor asked, unable to hide her frustration. She's in pain every day. Building a solid case against someone like Harrison Thompson takes time, Ms. Winters explained. He's respected, wealthy, and careful. If we move too quickly without sufficient evidence, he could easily dismiss our concerns and possibly remove Vivian from school altogether. So, we just watch her suffer? Mrs. Bennet asked. No, Ms. Winters said firmly. We document everything, build our case methodically, and create a safe space for Vivian to eventually tell her own story. That drawing is powerful evidence. Back in the classroom, the children were sharing their perfect day drawings. When it was Vivian's turn, she stood beside her desk, back perfectly straight despite the discomfort evident in her eyes. In my perfect day, I achieve optimal performance and receive positive evaluation, she explained in her advanced vocabulary. The other children looked confused, but Miss Taylor noticed something else. As Vivian spoke, her eyes kept drifting to Emma's drawing of a family having a picnic in the park. Later, as the children prepared to leave, Miss Taylor found Vivian standing before the wall where all the drawings were displayed. Are you looking for your drawing? Miss Taylor asked. No, Vivian said softly. I was looking at the others. They seem so free. The wistfulness in her voice was unmistakable. Everyone deserves to feel free, Vivian, Miss Taylor said gently. Especially children. Vivian looked up at her, those serious eyes suddenly vulnerable. Even me? Especially you. For a fleeting moment, Vivian's perfect posture relaxed. Just slightly, as if the mere idea of freedom had momentarily lifted a weight from her small shoulders. Dr. Eleanor Chen studied the collection of documents spread across her desk. Vivian's drawing, Miss Taylor's observation notes, Mrs. Bennet's health assessment, and the medical records provided by Harrison Thompson. Thank you for consulting with us, Doctor, Ms. Winters said. As a pediatric specialist, your expert opinion could be crucial. Dr. Chen adjusted her glasses, her expression growing more troubled as she examined each document. These supposed medical records contain concerning inconsistencies. The terminology is technically correct but oddly applied, as if someone with medical knowledge but not pediatric expertise created them. And this Dr. Winters, who supposedly designed her posture trainer, Mrs. Bennet asked. I've checked with every medical board in the country. Dr. Chen replied. There is an Alexander Winters who studied medicine briefly but never completed his degree. He now operates what he calls an alternative development center that focuses on structural optimization in children. Miss Taylor frowned. What does that even mean? It means he's not a licensed physician, and his methods aren't recognized by any legitimate medical institution, Dr. Chen explained. Based on what you've described, this device Vivian wears sounds like a modified corset, something no reputable doctor would prescribe for a developing child. So it could be harming her? Miss Taylor asked, her voice tight with concern. Dr. Chen nodded gravely. Restrictive devices worn for extended periods can affect muscle development, restrict breathing, and cause chronic pain. Children's bodies need freedom of movement for proper development. Ms. Winters took careful notes. What would you need to properly assess Vivian's condition? A thorough physical examination, including x-rays to check for any structural impact, Dr. Chen answered. But that would require parental consent, which Harrison Thompson is unlikely to provide if he suspects our concerns. Ms. Winters concluded. There is another option, Dr. Chen suggested. If the school nurse documents specific physical symptoms during routine health checks, we could establish grounds for a medical intervention. The next day, Mrs. Bennett conducted vision screenings for the entire first grade. When Vivian's turn came, the nurse was especially thorough. I notice you're shifting your weight a lot, Vivian, Mrs. Bennett commented casually. Is your back uncomfortable today? Vivian hesitated. It's just my posture trainer. It gets tighter after I've been sitting a while. Does it hurt? It's supposed to feel firm, the child answered carefully. Daddy says discomfort means it's working. I see. And how long do you wear it each day? All day except for bathing, Vivian replied. And sometimes at night, if my posture has been especially poor. Mrs. Bennett kept her expression neutral despite her growing alarm. Have you ever seen a regular doctor about this? Not Dr. Winters, but perhaps at a hospital? Vivian shook her head. Daddy says regular doctors don't understand advanced development techniques. They might try to interfere with my progress. Meanwhile, Miss Taylor was implementing a new approach in her classroom. She had created a special movement corner where children could go when they needed to stretch or wiggle. Our bodies need to move to stay healthy, she explained to the class. When you feel restless or uncomfortable, you can take a quick movement break. The children embraced this new freedom enthusiastically, all except Vivian, who watched with obvious longing but remained rigidly in her seat. During recess, Miss Taylor approached her on the playground. Wouldn't you like to try the swings today, Vivian? I could push you. Gently. The little girl's eyes lit up momentarily before dimming again. I'm not allowed on playground equipment. It might compromise my alignment. Who told you that? Daddy and Dr. Winters. They say unstructured movement can undo months of progress. That afternoon, Ms. Winters received a call from her investigator. We've located Alexander Winters, he reported. His center operates out of a converted warehouse. He claims to use methods inspired by historical practices that modern medicine has forgotten. Historical practices? Ms. Winters repeated, her concern deepening. Victorian-era postural training primarily. His clients are mostly wealthy families obsessed with proper development and social presentation. He's careful to make them sign agreements acknowledging his methods are alternative. After school, the team reconvened in Principal Morris's office. We're building a strong case, Ms. Winters explained, but we still need more direct evidence of harm before we can intervene legally. So we wait for this child to be injured seriously enough to satisfy legal requirements? Miss Taylor asked, unable to hide her frustration. No, Dr. Chen said, firmly. We create an opportunity for Vivian to reveal the full extent of her situation safely. How do we do that? Principal Morris asked. Children often reveal through indirect means what they can't say directly, Dr. Chen explained. Miss Taylor's art activity already yielded valuable insights. Perhaps another carefully designed classroom activity could create a safe space for Vivienne to share more. As they discussed potential approaches, Mrs. Bennett's phone buzzed with a message. Her face paled as she read it. What is it? Miss Taylor asked. It's from my friend at, Children's Hospital, Mrs. Bennett replied. They just admitted a 7-year-old with severe respiratory distress and musculoskeletal compression caused by an alternative postural device designed by someone named Winters. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Their window for helping, for Vivienne had just become much narrower. Miss Taylor watched as Vivienne stood at the edge of the classroom, staring up at the bookshelf. The child's favorite poetry book sat on the top shelf, just out of reach. For several minutes, Vivienne simply stood there, perfectly straight in her uncomfortable posture, looking longingly at the book but making no move to get it. Other children would have climbed on a chair, asked a friend for help, or called the teacher. But Vivienne just waited, as if expecting the book to somehow come to her through sheer patience. It was a small moment, but it crystallized everything Miss Taylor had observed. Vivienne had been trained not to ask for help, not to adapt, not to solve problems independently, only to endure discomfort silently. "Vivienne, do you need something?" Miss Taylor finally asked. The child startled slightly. "I'm fine, Miss Taylor." "You've been looking at that shelf for quite a while." Vivienne's cheeks flushed. "I was hoping to read the poetry book during free time." "It's too high for you to reach. Why didn't you ask for help?" The question seemed to genuinely perplex the child. "Perfect people don't need assistance. Daddy says independence is the mark of proper development." That afternoon, Miss Taylor introduced a new lesson to her class. "Today we're going to talk about something very important. Asking for help," she announced. "Even grown-ups need help sometimes. Doctors ask nurses for help during operations. Firefighters never work alone. Even the president has helpers." The children listened with interest as Miss Taylor explained that needing help wasn't a weakness, but a normal part of being human. "Now we're going to practice," she continued. "I've hidden different objects around the room, and you'll each get a card telling you what to find. Some are easy to reach, others are tricky. If you need help, you must ask a friend or me." The activity soon had the classroom buzzing with collaborative energy, as children helped each other reach high shelves or look under tables. All except Vivienne, who stood motionless by her desk, staring at her card with a troubled expression. Miss Taylor approached gently. "What does your card say, Vivienne?" "It says to find the red marker inside the art cabinet," the child replied softly. "But the cabinet is locked." "So what could you do?" Vivienne's brow furrowed in genuine confusion. "Wait until it's unlocked? Or you could ask for help," Miss Taylor suggested gently. "Would you like to try that?" Something like fear flickered across the child's face. "I don't know how." With gentle encouragement, Miss Taylor helped Vivienne form the simple question. "Could you please help me open the cabinet?" When Miss Taylor immediately produced the key with a warm smile, Vivienne looked stunned, as if she'd discovered a magical shortcut she never knew existed. After the activity, Miss Taylor gathered the children in a circle on the reading rug. As always, Vivienne remained at her desk, unable to sit on the floor due to her restrictive device. "What did we learn today?" Miss Taylor asked the class. "Asking for help is okay. Teamwork makes things easier. Everyone needs help sometimes." The children's enthusiastic responses filled the room. Miss Taylor noticed Vivienne watching intently, absorbing every word. Later, during private reading time, Miss Taylor knelt beside Vivienne's desk. "What did you think about our lesson today?" she asked quietly. Vivienne glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "Is it really true that perfect people ask for help?" "Absolutely. In fact, knowing when to ask for help is part of being wise." The child considered this revolutionary concept. "At home, asking for help means I've failed." "Failed at what, Vivienne?" "Being independent, being proper, being—" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Worth the investment." Miss Taylor kept her expression calm despite the alarm bells ringing in her mind. "What does that mean?" "Worth the investment. Daddy says he invests time and resources in my development. If I don't achieve optimal outcomes, the investment is wasted." Vivienne recited this as if it were perfectly normal. Perfect means no pain showing. Perfect means standing straight even when the trainer hurts. It was the closest Vivian had come to directly acknowledging her suffering. Miss Taylor recognized the crucial moment for what it was. "Vivian," she said, gently, "what if I told you that no child should have to hide their pain? That the things making you uncomfortable might actually not be helping you at all?" The little girl's eyes widened. "But Daddy and Dr. Winters say..." "Sometimes even parents can be mistaken," Miss Taylor said carefully, "especially when they're getting advice from people who aren't real doctors." Confusion clouded Vivian's face. "Dr. Winters isn't a real doctor?" "We don't think so, no." The child fell silent, processing this revelation. Finally, she whispered, "If he's not a real doctor, why does Daddy believe him?" "Sometimes people believe things because they want to, not because they're true," Miss Taylor explained. "Your father wants what's best for you, but he might be mistaken about how to achieve that." Vivian's perfect posture faltered slightly as she leaned closer. "Miss Taylor," she whispered, "sometimes I can't breathe right when my trainer is too tight. Is that normal?" The quiet admission sent a chill down Miss Taylor's spine. "No, Vivian, that's not normal, and it's not okay." For the first time, a tear slipped down the child's cheek. "I thought it was just me being weak." Miss Taylor fought to keep her own emotions in check. This small breakthrough was exactly what they needed, but it broke her heart that it had taken so long to achieve. The black sedan with tinted windows pulled up to the Thompson estate precisely at 2:15 p.m. Ms. Winters stepped out, accompanied by Officer Claire Rodriguez in her plainclothes police uniform and Dr. Eleanor Chen carrying a medical bag. "Remember," Ms. Winters cautioned as they approached the imposing front door, "this is officially a wellness check, not an investigation. We're here to ensure Vivian's environment is safe and healthy." The door opened before they could ring the bell. Ms. Pierce, the housekeeper, greeted them with a tight smile. "Mr. Thompson is expecting you. Please follow me." The grand foyer echoed with their footsteps as they were led through the mansion. Everything was immaculate, museum quality. Artwork adorned the walls, crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and not a speck of dust could be seen on any surface. Yet despite its opulence, the house felt strangely sterile, more like a showroom than a home. Harrison Thompson awaited them in his study, rising from behind an antique desk with practiced charm. "Ms. Winters, what an unexpected surprise, and you've brought company. Mr. Thompson, this is Officer Rodriguez and Dr. Chen. We're conducting a routine wellness check as part of our follow-up process." If he was alarmed by their presence, Harrison didn't show it. "Of course. Though I wish you'd called ahead. Vivienne is at her piano lesson in the music room. Would you care for refreshments while I have Ms. Pierce fetch her?" "That won't be necessary," Officer Rodriguez replied firmly. "We'd prefer to see Vivienne in her regular environment first, if you don't mind." A flicker of something, annoyance, concern, crossed Harrison's face before his pleasant mask returned. "As you wish. This way, please." He led them through corridors lined with photographs. Not family snapshots, but formal portraits. Ms. Winters noticed something odd. In each picture, Vivian appeared in formal poses with perfect posture, but her face was never the focus. Some photos were artistically blurred. Others captured her from behind or in profile, as if her identity was secondary to her presentation. The music room was a grand space with floor-to-ceiling windows and a gleaming black grand piano. Vivian sat perfectly straight on the bench, her small fingers moving methodically across the keys, while an elderly instructor counted time beside her. "Vivian," Harrison called, "we have visitors. Please greet them properly." The child immediately stopped playing and stood, her movements careful and measured as she approached. "Good afternoon," she recited with rehearsed politeness. "Welcome to our home." Dr. Chen knelt to the child's level. "Hello, Vivian. I'm Dr. Chen. I'm a pediatrician, a doctor who helps children stay healthy." Vivian's eyes widened slightly at the word doctor. darting briefly toward her father. "These ladies have some questions for you," Harrison explained smoothly. "I'll be right here the whole time." "Actually," Officer Rodriguez interjected, "we'd like to speak with Vivian privately for a few minutes. Standard procedure." Harrison's smile tightened. "I don't recall agreeing to that." "Mr. Thompson," Ms. Winters said calmly, "refusing a standard wellness interview could raise concerns that might necessitate more formal measures." The implied threat hung in the air. After a tense moment, Harrison nodded stiffly. "Very well, I'll be in the adjoining room. Vivienne, remember your composure." Once he left, Dr. Chen smiled warmly at the child. "Vivienne, would you show me your bedroom? I'd love to see where you sleep and play." "Of course," Vivienne replied automatically, though her voice lacked enthusiasm. The child's bedroom was as perfect as the rest of the house. Expensive furniture, educational toys arranged precisely on shelves, books organized by height. Nothing was out of place. Nothing looked played with. "This is a beautiful room," Officer Rodriguez commented. "Do you like spending time here?" "I have my development schedule here," Vivian answered, not quite addressing the question. "Daddy says proper environment promotes proper growth." Dr. Chen noticed how the child continued standing, maintaining her rigid posture despite being in her own room. "Would you like to sit down while we talk?" "Vivienne, you must be tired from your piano practice." A flash of uncertainty crossed the child's face. "I should maintain optimal posture during formal interactions." "This isn't formal," Dr. Chen assured her. "We're just having a friendly chat." Reluctantly, Vivienne perched on the edge of her bed, though she remained unnaturally straight. "Vivian," Ms. Winters began gently, "Miss Taylor mentioned that you wear a special device to help with your posture. Could you tell us about that?" The child's hands twisted nervously in her lap. "It's my posture trainer. It helps me develop correctly." "Does it hurt?" Dr. Chen asked directly. Vivian's practiced mask slipped momentarily. "Daddy says discomfort is part of proper development." "That's not what I asked," Dr. Chen said kindly. "I asked if it hurts you." The room fell silent as Vivian struggled with the question. Finally, in a whisper so soft they barely heard it, "Yes." "Could we see this device?" Officer Rodriguez asked. Vivian glanced nervously at the door. "It's in my closet. I'm not wearing it today because Daddy said I needed freedom of movement for piano." Ms. Winters and Officer Rodriguez exchanged significant looks as Dr. Chen moved toward the closet. Inside, alongside perfectly arranged clothing, hung what looked like a modified corset with rigid panels and adjustable straps. "May I?" Dr. Chen asked, reaching for it. Before Vivian could answer, the bedroom door opened, and Thompson stood framed in the doorway, his expression thunderous. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" he demanded. "Going through my daughter's personal belongings was not part of our agreement." "Mr. Thompson," Officer Rodriguez said firmly, "we're conducting a standard wellness check, which includes examining any medical devices your daughter uses regularly." Harrison stepped into the room, placing himself between the closet and the visitors. That device was custom designed for Vivian's specific needs by a specialist. A specialist who, our records indicate, is not a licensed physician, Ms. Winters countered. Behind her father, Vivian stood frozen, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and something else. Perhaps hope. "I think we've seen enough," Officer Rodriguez stated firmly, facing Harrison Thompson across Vivian's perfect bedroom. "We'd like to take Vivian for a standard medical evaluation." Harrison's confident demeanor faltered momentarily. "That's completely unnecessary. I've provided her complete medical records." "Records from an unlicensed practitioner," Dr. Chen interjected, holding the rigid posture device she'd taken from the closet. "Mr. Thompson, as a pediatrician, I can tell you that this device is not medically appropriate for a child Vivian's age. It could cause serious developmental issues." "You're overstepping your bounds," Harrison insisted, his voice rising slightly. Alexander Winters is a visionary whose methods are simply ahead of conventional practice. Vivienne has received nothing but the finest care. Throughout this exchange, Vivienne stood silently, her eyes darting between the adults, uncertainty written across her small face. Ms. Winters knelt beside her. Vivienne, would you like to go with Dr. Chen for a checkup, just to make sure everything is okay with your body? Before the child could answer, Harrison interrupted. She doesn't need another examination, and I don't consent to this. Mr. Thompson, Officer Rodriguez said calmly, given the concerns raised by qualified professionals, we have grounds for a temporary order allowing a medical assessment. You're welcome to accompany us to the hospital, or we can proceed without you. Your choice. A tense silence filled the room as Harrison weighed his options. Finally, with visible restraint, he nodded. Fine. I'll drive Vivienne. Myself. I'm afraid that's not how this works, Officer Rodriguez explained. Vivienne will ride with us. You're welcome to follow in your own vehicle. At Children's Hospital, Dr. Chen gently guided Vivienne into an examination room while Harrison waited outside, his lawyer already on the phone. I'm going to check how your body is growing, Dr. Chen explained warmly. Nothing will hurt, I promise. Vivienne sat nervously on the examination table. Am I in trouble, Dr. Chen? Not at all, sweetheart. We just want to make sure your body is healthy and growing the way it should. The examination was thorough but gentle. Dr. Chen noted pressure marks where the restrictive device had been pressing against Vivienne's ribs and spine. X-rays revealed concerning patterns in her developing skeletal structure. When the examination was complete, Dr. Chen met with Ms. Winters and Officer Rodriguez in a private consultation room. The findings are troubling, she explained, displaying the X-rays. Vivienne shows early signs of muscular atrophy and skeletal compression consistent with long-term use of restrictive devices. Her breathing capacity is below normal, and she has pressure marks consistent with extended compression. Is it dangerous? Ms. Winters asked. If continued, yes. Children's bodies need freedom to develop properly. Fortunately, at her age, most of the effects should be reversible with proper care and physical therapy. Meanwhile, in the children's waiting area, a child life specialist sat with Vivienne, providing crayons and paper. Instead of drawing, Vivienne stared at the other children playing freely, their movements unrestricted and natural. Would you like to draw something? The specialist asked kindly. Vivienne hesitated, then picked up a crayon. Slowly, she began to draw. When she finished, she handed the picture to the specialist without a word. The drawing showed a small figure inside what looked like a cage. Outside the cage, other children played and smiled. The caged figure wasn't crying or obviously sad, just watching, with empty eyes and perfect posture. When the specialist showed this drawing to Dr. Chen and the others, their determination hardened. This is how she sees herself, Ms. Winters said quietly. Caged and separated from normal childhood. Dr. Chen nodded gravely. The physical evidence combined with this psychological insight gives us what we need. It's time to take the next step. Chapter 12. The Breaking Point. The next morning, Harrison Thompson stormed into Franklin Elementary, his tailored suit as impeccable as ever, but his usual composure noticeably absent. He strode directly to Principal Morris's office, barely acknowledging the secretary's attempt to stop him. I'm withdrawing Vivienne immediately, he announced, placing an envelope on the desk. These are transfer papers for her new school, a private academy that understands progressive developmental methods. Principal Morris remained calm. Mr. Thompson, please have a seat. There are some matters we need to discuss first. There's nothing to discuss. After yesterday's outrageous overreach, I've lost all confidence in this institution. At that moment, Ms. Winters entered with Officer Rodriguez. Mr. Thompson, I'm glad you're here. We need to talk about the medical evaluation results. Harrison's jaw tightened. My lawyers are already addressing that unauthorized examination. Dr. Winters has provided a complete rebuttal of Dr. Chen's outdated assessment. While this confrontation unfolded in the principal's office, Miss Taylor was conducting a special class activity about feelings. The children sat in a circle, taking turns picking emotion cards and sharing when they felt that way. "I feel happy when my mom makes pancakes," one boy shared. "I feel scared during thunderstorms," added a girl with pigtails. When it was Vivian's turn, she stared at her card in silence. "What emotion did you get, Vivian?" Miss Taylor asked gently. "Pain," the child read quietly. "But that's not really an emotion, is it?" "Pain can be physical or emotional," Miss Taylor explained. "Can you think of a time when you felt pain?" Vivian's usual perfect posture suddenly seemed to require tremendous effort. She glanced toward the classroom door, then back at Miss Taylor, her small face tight with indecision. "It's okay," Miss Taylor assured her. "This is a safe place." Something in Vivian seemed to crumble then, like a dam breaking after holding back too much for too long. "I feel pain every day," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The trainer squeezes me so tight sometimes I can't breathe properly. When I sleep in it, I have bad dreams that I'm trapped. I thought it was normal, that all children had to wear special equipment to grow correctly." The classroom fell silent as Vivian continued, each word coming faster than the last, as if she feared being stopped. "Daddy says it's for my future, but it hurts now. Dr. Winters keeps making it tighter. They measure me every week to see if I'm developing the right shape. If I complain, Daddy says I'm being ungrateful for all the special attention I receive." Miss Taylor knelt beside her, heartbreaking at this flood of honesty. "Vivian, what you're describing isn't normal or healthy." "It's not?" Genuine confusion filled the child's eyes. "But Daddy says, your father wants what's best for you," Miss Taylor said carefully. "But the methods he's using are harmful, not helpful." Tears welled in Vivian's eyes, perhaps her first genuine emotional display since starting school. "Sometimes I just want to run and play like other children. Is that wrong?" "No, sweetheart, that's exactly what you should be doing." Mrs. Bennet, who had been quietly observing from the doorway, stepped forward. "Vivian, would you come with me, please? There are some people who need to hear what you just shared." In Principal Morris's office, the heated discussion halted when Mrs. Bennet entered with Vivian. The child's eyes widened at the sight of her father. "Daddy," she said, her voice small but steady, "I told them about my trainer and how it hurts." Harrison's face paled. "Vivian, we've discussed this. Temporary discomfort leads to permanent excellence." Ms. Winters stepped forward. "Mr. Thompson, based on medical evidence and now Vivian's own testimony, we're implementing temporary protective measures. Vivian will be placed in supervised care while a full evaluation of her home situation is conducted." For the first time, Harrison Thompson appeared truly shaken. "You can't do this. She's my daughter. A daughter who deserves to grow up healthy and without constant pain," Officer Rodriguez stated firmly. As the adults continued discussing legal procedures, Vivian stood quietly by Miss Taylor's side, her perfect posture finally relaxing slightly, as if an invisible weight had begun to lift from her small shoulders. Sunlight streamed through large windows, casting warm patterns across the colorful carpet where children played. Bright murals adorned the walls, and shelves overflowed with books and toys. This was Marigold House, a specialized children's center where Vivian would stay temporarily while the legal proceedings continued. "This will be your room," Ms. Winters explained, showing Vivian a cheerful space with a cozy bed, a desk, and a bookshelf. "You can arrange it however you like." Vivian stood in the doorway, her expression a mixture of confusion and wonder. "I can change where things go?" "Of course. This is your space." The child walked slowly around the room, touching the soft bedspread, examining the stuffed animals arranged on a shelf, peering into the closet where simple, comfortable clothes hung. "Where's my posture trainer?" she asked quietly. "You won't need that anymore," Ms. Winters explained gently. "Dr. Chen says your body needs to move freely now." Vivian's brow furrowed. But without it, how will I develop properly? By playing, running, climbing, and just being a child, Ms. Winters answered. That's how bodies naturally grow strong and healthy. Later that afternoon, Vivian met the other children staying at Marigold House. Most were there for temporary care while their family situations were sorted out. Unlike the formal, achievement-focused interaction she was accustomed to, these children played freely, their laughter echoing through the common room. A friendly girl named Zoe approached. "Want to play blocks with us? We're building a castle." Vivian hesitated, standing perfectly straight as always. "I don't know how." "It's easy, you just stack them however you want," Zoe explained, demonstrating by placing one block atop another. There's no wrong way to do it. The concept of no wrong way was revolutionary to Vivian. Cautiously, she picked up a block, turning it over in her hands as if it were a precious, unfamiliar artifact. Ms. Patel, one of the center's child psychologists, observed from nearby. "Would you like to try sitting on the carpet with the others, Vivian?" Again that hesitation. "Am I allowed?" "Of course. You can sit however feels comfortable." Slowly, Vivian lowered herself to the carpet, her movements stiff and uncertain. She placed her block carefully on the growing structure, then looked up in surprise when the other children cheered. "Good job!" Zoe exclaimed. "Now put another one." For the first time in perhaps years, Vivian began to relax, just slightly, as she focused on the simple joy of building something without rules or expectations. That evening, as Ms. Patel helped Vivian prepare for bed, she noticed how the child still moved with careful precision, as if invisible constraints remained even though the physical device was gone. "How does your body feel without the trainer?" she asked gently. Vivian considered this question seriously. Different, lighter, but also scared. Scared? "Can you tell me more about that?" "Like I might fall apart without it," the child confessed. "Daddy always said it was holding me together." "Properly." Ms. Patel sat on the edge of the bed. "Your body knows how to hold itself together naturally, Vivian. The muscles just need time to remember how." The next day, Miss Taylor visited, bringing a card signed by Vivian's classmates. "They miss you," she explained, handing Vivian the colorful paper covered in childish scrawls. Vivian studied the card with wonder. "They do? Of course. You're part of our classroom family. When can I come back to school?" "Soon," Miss Taylor promised. "The grown-ups are working on making sure everything is safe and healthy for you." As the days passed, small changes appeared in Vivian. Her movements became gradually less rigid. She began asking questions, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. During physical therapy sessions designed as playful games, she discovered muscles long constrained by the restrictive device. The breakthrough moment came unexpectedly during outdoor playtime. The children were playing a simple game of tag, running and laughing across the grassy yard. Vivian watched from the sidelines as always, her posture still unnaturally perfect. Then Zoe ran over, breathless and smiling. "Come on. Vivian, you be the tagger." "I don't run," Vivian stated automatically. "Everyone can run," Zoe insisted, taking her hand. "Just try." Something shifted in Vivian's expression, a spark of curiosity overcoming years of constraint. Tentatively, she took a step forward, then another, and suddenly, she was moving across the grass in an awkward half-jog, her movements uncoordinated but undeniably free. Her first genuine smile bloomed across her face as she called out, "I'm running. Look at me. I'm actually running." The adults supervising the playground exchanged emotional glances as they witnessed this small but profound triumph. A child reclaiming her right to simply be a child. "Breathe in deeply, like you're smelling a beautiful flower," Ms. Rachel, the pediatric physical therapist, instructed. Vivian inhaled, her chest expanding more fully than it had in years. "Now breathe out. Slowly, like you're gently blowing out a candle." The child exhaled, her shoulders relaxing with each breath. "Wonderful job," Ms. Rachel praised. "Your breathing is getting stronger every day." 3 weeks had passed since Vivian's arrival at Marigold House. 3 weeks of gentle exercises, playful movement activities, and gradual rediscovery of her body's natural capabilities. The physical changes were remarkable. Her posture was still straight but no longer rigid, her movements increasingly fluid, as tight muscles slowly remembered their natural function. But the emotional healing was even more profound. Vivian had begun to laugh, a real, spontaneous sound that bubbled up unexpectedly during games or funny stories. She asked questions constantly, her natural curiosity finally unleashed. And sometimes, when she thought no one was watching, she would twirl in circles just to feel the simple joy of unrestrained movement. "Ms. Rachel," Vivian asked as they finished their session, "will my body ever be normal like other children's?" "Your body is already perfectly normal," Ms. Rachel assured her. "It just needs time to recover from being held too still for too long, like a butterfly that's been in its cocoon. It takes a little while for the wings to unfold properly." Later that afternoon, Miss Taylor arrived for her regular visit, bringing Vivian's schoolwork and updates from her classmates. "We miss you in our circle time," Miss Taylor said as they sat together in the center's bright library. "Emma asks about you every day." "Really?" Vivian seemed genuinely surprised that anyone would notice her absence. "Of course, friends care about each other." The word friends made Vivian smile. It was still new to her, this concept of connections based on simple enjoyment rather than performance or achievement. As they worked through spelling exercises, Miss Taylor noticed how Vivian no longer sat with painful precision. She still maintained good posture, but now she leaned forward with interest, shifted positions when uncomfortable, and even tucked one leg beneath her, all normal movements that had been impossible in her restrictive device. "I have some news," Miss Taylor said when they finished the lesson. "The court has made some decisions about your situation." Vivian's expression grew serious. "Am I going home?" "Not yet," Miss Taylor explained gently. "The judge believes your father needs more time to learn about healthy child development. He's attending special classes and working with experts who are helping him understand better ways to support your growth." "Is he angry with me?" Vivian asked, her voice small. "No, sweetheart. He's sad about what happened, but he's not angry. In fact, he's learning a lot about how to be a better father." In another part of the city, Harrison Thompson sat across from Dr. Eleanor Chen in a bright office at the Family Wellness Center. Gone was his immaculate suit, replaced by casual clothing that somehow made him look more human, more vulnerable. "I truly believed I was helping her," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "After her mother died, I became obsessed with giving Vivian the perfect future, as if I could somehow protect her from everything by making her flawless." "Children aren't meant to be flawless," Dr. Chen replied gently. "They're meant to be children, messy, growing, learning, sometimes falling but always getting back up." Harrison nodded slowly, the hard edges of his perfectionism gradually softening through these weekly sessions. "When can I see her?" "Soon. We're arranging a supervised visit. But first, I'd like you to watch some videos of Vivian's physical therapy sessions. It's important for you to see how her natural movement is returning and how happy it makes her." That evening, as Ms. Patel helped Vivian prepare for bed, the child asked a question that had clearly been on her mind. "Is my daddy learning to be different?" Ms. Patel sat beside her on the bed. "He's learning that there are better ways to help you grow up healthy and strong, ways that don't involve pain or restriction." Vivian considered this thoughtfully. "I think he was trying to make me perfect because he was scared." "Scared of what, Vivian?" "Of me getting hurt, of making mistakes." The child's insight was remarkable. "But everyone makes mistakes, right? Even grown-ups?" "Especially grown-ups," Ms. Patel confirmed with a gentle smile. The next day, Harrison Thompson sat in a small observation room, watching through a one-way window as Vivian participated in a group movement activity. Tears streamed silently down his face as he saw his daughter skip awkwardly across the room, her movements unpracticed but joyful, her laughter uninhibited for perhaps the first time in her life. When the session ended, he handed Ms. Winters a simple note written in careful print. "You were always perfect, just not in the way I understood." "May I give this to her?" Ms. Winters asked. Harrison nodded, unable to speak through his emotion. In that moment, watching his daughter's newfound freedom, something inside him finally began to heal as well. 6 months had passed since that fateful day when Vivienne first whispered her secret to Miss Taylor. 6 months of gentle therapy, gradual healing, and careful rebuilding of both a child's body and a family's foundation. Today was Franklin Elementary's annual field day, a celebration of movement, play, and childhood joy. Vivienne stood at the edge of the field, watching children warm up for the various activities. She wore a simple t-shirt and shorts like everyone else, her hair in a casual ponytail instead of the severe bun her father had once insisted upon. "Are you ready?" Miss Taylor asked, kneeling beside her. Vivienne nodded, though her eyes revealed a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "What if I'm not good at any of the races?" "Field day isn't about being good," Miss Taylor explained. "It's about having fun and trying your best." From a designated area near the bleachers, Harrison Thompson watched his daughter. He was permitted these supervised visits now, each one a step toward rebuilding trust. The man who had once obsessed over perfection now sat, quietly, learning to appreciate something far more valuable, his daughter's happiness. When the announcer called for the first grade sprint, Vivienne took her place at the starting line. Her classmates smiled and gave her encouraging high fives, having welcomed her back months ago without the judgment adults so often carried. "Runners ready?" the PE teacher called. "Set, go!" Vivienne ran, not with perfect form or impressive speed, but with uninhibited joy. Her arms pumped awkwardly, her stride uneven after years of restricted movement. She was among the last to cross the finish line, far behind the natural athletes in her class. But her face told the true story of victory. Flushed with effort, beaming with accomplishment, she crossed that line with a smile that outshone every trophy Harrison had ever imagined for her. From the sidelines, he found himself clapping harder than anyone, tears streaming unashamedly down his face as he witnessed something truly perfect. His daughter, simply being a child. After the race, Vivienne spotted him and approached cautiously, Miss Taylor by her side. "Did you see me run, Daddy?" she asked, her voice hopeful. "I did," he answered, kneeling to her level. "You were beautiful." "I didn't win," she said, testing his reaction. Harrison smiled gently. "You did something much more important than winning. You enjoyed yourself." Vivienne studied his face, finding no disappointment there. "I'm getting stronger every day," she told him proudly. "Ms. Rachel says my body is remembering how to move naturally." "I'm so glad," Harrison said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm learning too, Vivienne, learning how to be a better father." Their time together was brief, just 30 minutes under watchful supervision, but it marked another step in their healing journey. As Harrison prepared to leave, Vivienne surprised him with a spontaneous hug, something she'd never done in the old days of rigid rules and perfect posture. "See you next week, Daddy," she said simply. Later, as the children enjoyed ice cream treats, Miss Taylor watched Vivienne chatting animatedly with friends, ice cream smudged on her cheek, her posture relaxed and natural. "Quite a transformation," Principal Morris commented, joining her. Miss Taylor nodded. "The body heals quickly when given freedom. So does the spirit." Across the playground, Vivienne laughed at something her friend Emma said, then spontaneously performed a twirl, arms outstretched, face tilted toward the sun. It wasn't a perfect ballet move, just a child expressing joy through movement. And in that imperfect, beautiful moment, she was exactly who she was meant to be all along. Not a perfect doll, but a perfectly normal child, running, jumping, occasionally falling, but always getting back up again.